Perfect. We're fine.
Okay, we're launching now, so we'll be live in just a moment. Okay, I think here we are. Hopefully we didn't ramble too much. Hello, everybody. One of you is watching already. What a keener you are. This is The Line Live. We haven't done one of these in a while. It's been too long. And if you actually, Jen, if you want evidence that we're not organized on this one, now, I don't think that's often like it's not a hard sell, you and I being unorganized. I don't think people are going to be. The last time we did one of these, we had such grand plans. We were going to have drinks from local places, we were going to have food from local places. We threw this thing so completely at the last minute that I've got the beer I had in my fridge and like a bag of chips.
Well,
So that's the level of sophistication we're bringing to the line live tonight.
then this strikes me as the correct time to tell you that I'd like to announce my resignation.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
well, I hate to steal your moment, but I too have prepared my resignation. Okay, Jen, you know what? If you
okay.
don't mind, can you be the charming one for just a second? I just need to do some technical stuff for just a second and send out the post on social media. But why don't you tell me how your morning started?
All right. Well, my morning started. Well, my son, for example, was sort of a little late getting up out of bed this morning. And so I do what I sometimes do when my son is a little late to get out of bed. I sort of get under the covers with him and snuggle, like I snuggle. We have a little snuggle, a little morning snuggle, you know what I mean? And so he and I were both sleeping in and refusing to get out of bed because it's cold outside and it's late. And my husband came upstairs to sort of from downstairs. He was preparing the lunches, being a responsible parent, which I was not being. So he came upstairs to wake us up. And he leaned in over my head and he said, Freeland resigned. And I went, oh, really? There's a reason to get up this morning. That's fantastic. So I just started giggling. And then he said, and she like blew him out in an incredible resignation letter. And I was like, hello, time to get the coffee. Off we go. So my daughter had to stay home from school today because we found the early signs of hand, foot, and mouth disease. So I put her downstairs on the television to watch and draw sprunkies while I obsessively watched CBC live feeds and monitored, insider gossip chats for about 10 hours straight today. That was my day. That was my day.
You know
Um,
what? I'm going to give you the credit for this, and I still need you to buy me a couple minutes of time here just while I get
it's
the
fine.
the
'Cause I'm
Substack
also
post out.
assuming that everyone who's logging in for this today already kind of knows the news.
Well, yeah,
No.
I assume they know the news, but I want to tell you, and I want to give you this credit. You saw something coming. Like I sketched out in an email to you and some other colleagues today, a couple quick scenarios, how this could go. You right away were like, he ain't proroguing, he ain't resigning.
Nope.
So, as of 9/11 Eastern Time, 7/11 Mountain Time, that is true. Why were you so convinced he was not going to prorogue or resign today?
Okay, so we have a lot to unpack here. But I was very convinced that he wasn't going to resign because the underlying fundamentals of his leadership hadn't changed, right? So he goes into a cabinet meeting or a caucus meeting, even in a scenario where, the worst case happens for him and the rumors are true and Champagne and Anand bail on him. There is no scenario where he can't just basically grit his teeth and force his caucus to push him out by taking down the government. Like they have not this caucus has not voted in for the Reform Act, so there's no mechanism for kicking him out. There's no mechanism within the party for kicking him out. As a result of, I believe, the 2016 Liberal Party constitutional amendments that they made to their own internal party constitution. There are only a couple of scenarios in which the party has any ability to kick him out. He's surrounded himself by Garumbalus shadows of humans who have, to this point, demonstrated no will to risk his leadership or challenge the party apparatus in any way. Um, Freeland resigning was a spectacular thing to happen, but it doesn't actually change anything. Until you have a critical mass of Liberal MPs who are willing to do more than just come out and say, please leave, until you have a critical mass of Liberal MPs who are willing to come out and say, I will vote against you in a confidence motion, like I will bring this government down, then essentially what you have is a group of Liberal MPs who have given up their own power. They've handed it over to just Justin Trudeau. And as long as Justin Trudeau can continue to operate with his unique combination of either shamelessness or incredible self-regard, he can continue to just ride this caucus out. So what we saw today, I think, and of course I can only go by the rumors and leaks that have come out of the caucus room, is that Trudeau engaged in exactly the same playbook that he's engaged in the last two times he had a caucus revolt. He got everybody in the room. He let everybody vent their feels. He absorbed their emotion as if it were sustenance to his soul. And then he said, well, I shall reflect upon your musings and try to do better. And he bought himself more time. And every time that he buys himself more time, he undercuts any potential success or any potential dissenters, and he destroys any momentum for an actual credible revolt. In this case, he also had some structural items going to his advantage. For example, there are no confidence motions. There apparently wasn't enough new spending or new types of allocated spending in the fall economic statement to turn that into a confidence motion. Essentially, it's 2 days until session closes for the holidays, and the opposition is out of confidence motion days until the end of the year. So he just needs to survive today and tomorrow. Then everybody's on vacation, and everybody has time to reflect. I noticed even in the caucus meeting, apparently he also played the memory or recollections may vary card, which again, we've seen Trudeau play again and again and again. Oh, this person remembers this differently than I did. I mean, again, it's literally the same playbook, and the caucus falls for it every single time he plays it. Every time. So nothing, no, I mean, Freeland resigning is an incredible blow to his credibility and his ability to command moral leadership in Confederation, but it doesn't fundamentally shift the underlying power dynamics that allow him to persist in his position. And until you have either him just saying, "Yeah, screw it, this isn't worth it anymore." So he internally, and I don't think he will because I don't think his own psychology permits it. Or until you have, like I said, a critical mass of Liberal caucus members who are not only willing to put their names on an angry letter, but who are actually willing to say, no, screw you. We're not supporting you anymore. We'll sit as House, we'll cross the floor, we'll sit as independents, we'll vote against a confidence motion, name it. Until they actually exercise their own, constitutionally given powers, nothing changed. Nothing changes. Now, that being said, that's going to be the thing I note. And then 20 minutes into this live podcast, we're going to find out that he resigned. And that's because I can't predict every lever of power that is currently being employed against him. I mean, right now we know that he's at a major Liberal fundraiser, I believe at the Laurier Club. And it's very possible that the donors are hosting some kind of revolt and subjecting him to it. But even so, my deep suspicion is that he's going to do with these donors exactly what he does with his caucus. I'm hearing you. I'm empathizing with you. I get what you're putting down. I deeply listen to you. It's nothing. It's nothing to him to be able to do that. He just absorbs it. He just eats it. Right?
You know what? I hear everything you're saying. I agree
Mhm.
with everything you're saying. I
Sure.
still think he's done. I don't think he's immediately done, but I think Chrystia Freeland killed his political career today. And I don't know if she did it in a way where he's going to resign. I don't know if she did it in a way where he's going to have to be forced out in some coup, or if this is just might be the moment where he himself realizes it's over. But I think he's done. And
I think he's done, but the question is he can be done and still prime minister for another 6 months.
I don't,
Like,
yeah,
it's no, like my actual prediction right now is that I think the Liberals are going to call an election in spring ahead of the next budget. I think that the costs for maintaining power past another budget are going to be too high, and they're
Yeah.
going to have to call another election. So I don't think that he's going to be able to push this to October of 2020 or 2025. I don't believe that that's the case. But that was my prediction
That's my bad.
for how long this government was going to last 3 months ago. I
Yeah.
thought that they were going to, you know what I'm saying? Like this, I didn't think they were going to make it past the spring 2025 budget. That's when I thought they were going to call the election. That was true in September. It's still true today. Unless something changes tomorrow, right? What is it that could change tomorrow? What's going to change tomorrow? Are all the Liberal caucus members going to get together and say, that's it, we're going to vote against the government in order to go to an election? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
giving
that didn't
Tammy
take
a
long.
hi, bud.
Mom,
Yeah.
I heard the door open.
Yeah, it's probably Daddy.
I don't really think so.
Could you please go away? I love you. I'm on TV.
It's the I love you that follows the go away that see, that's perfect.
He's the cutest.
You know what's
He's
good is
the
when your
entire
kids
world.
get older and they learn that if they do that, I will go psychotic and the
But
iPad just
like,
disappears.
I can't go sit like that's the cutest thing ever. Like, there's one person on this entire earth who loves me. It's that person.
I think we have a live stream right now that's filling up with people who love you and a few who hate you. So it's all gonna come out a wash.
But anyway, I just look, okay, so look, is it possible that okay, by the sounds of it, remember earlier in the fall we had the 20 Liberal MPs signing a
Yeah.
letter to ask Justin Trudeau to reconsider his leadership position by October 26th? Pretty
Yep.
please. So apparently that number is now 60. That's a fatal number.
Yeah, I agree.
If any of those, like if 35, I think the number that I came up with was 35. If they can get 35 to actually sit as independents, to actually commit to follow through and vote against a confidence motion, yeah, they're probably done. He's probably done. But I think he knows where his power lies, and I think he's going to force these people to actually vote against the government. That's what I think he's going to force them to do. And as long as his will is stronger than theirs, what changes?
Here, I want to run through. Okay,
Okay,
now,
but
first of all,
let's steelman this. Like, am I wrong? What?
no, no, even better than you not being wrong. I'm finally done doing all the stuff in the background, so I can
Hmm.
actually really
Engagement
pay
goals.
attention to the live stream. To everybody who signed in before, I hope you enjoyed 0.3% of my attention. But here I'm going to give you a full 25% of it, and that ain't bad. I want to run through a couple of things that happened today.
Okay.
First of all, just a few bits and bytes, things I noticed. The first thing in Freeland's letter after the boilerplate, it's been wonderful to serve Canadians, blah, 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 was you asked me to leave on Friday.
Mhm.
And there's so much she could have led that letter with. We live in challenging times. There's been like, or like almost anything. And instead, it was the immediate putting of her version down on the record. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering today if Catherine McKenna, Jody Wilson-Raybould, Jane Philpott are going, aha, I know what she's doing there. Also, there are resignation letters, and there are also, I guess, what we'd call political murder letters. And this was a political murder letter
Mhm.
because, first of all, she puts her version out. It's the
Mhm.
first thing she does. She's like, on Friday, you told me to get the fuck out of cabinet, and I'm not doing that. And
Oh,
then she
and
goes,
then I would
you're
just support,
spending
and then has the cojones to show up at the caucus meeting
uh,
where Justin Trudeau tries to say, well, there was a different version of events, but of course he can't because she's
she's in
literally
the room.
sitting in the caucus meeting. So like she's watched this game. She's watched this game.
It's not the first time some version of this has happened. So
Right.
yes. So yeah, there's that. Also burying in the well, not even burying, like putting right in the letter, this is a time when we need to keep our fiscal powder dry. This is not a time for political gimmicks. This is a time where we might need to take on the Americans. Saying that in recent weeks we've disagreed. This was a resignation letter, but it was also the first move in Freeland, a former journalist, establishing a public narrative.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that jumped out at me right away. The other thing that jumped out at me right away, and this is one of the things that I'm actually genuinely pissed off and freaked out about right now. prime minister's a damn good politician. PMO, what's left of it, they're pretty good politicians. They're good at tactical level politics. I do think they're exhausted and burnt out there. They're not batting. They're not playing at the highest level. But I think they're trying to think this through tactically. It's like, holy shit, what about the Quebec caucus? Or quick, let's get Dominic LeBlanc sworn in as finance minister. I don't think they realize that Freeland put a line in there that was a direct message to the premiers, where she's talking about working collaboratively with the premiers, and she's talking about, dealing with the Americans here in an incredibly polite way. Chrystia Freeland has largely confirmed everything you and I have been talking about for months. And I don't
Has
consider
she
it a
been reading the
personal
line?
favor. I don't assume she has a ton of time to sit around at home and listen to the Line podcast. But we've been saying for months there's no center at Team Canada. The feds aren't effectively rallying the provinces. Things like the GST cut are going to undermine our ability to go to the Americans and say, yeah, look, we want to spend more on the military, but you're going to have to give us a little bit. We're a little bit short on bucks right now. The other thing I think she did, and this is again just a strategic analysis, I think Freeland has completely outflanked the PMO. We'll see what the PMO comes up with, but I think Freeland won the day. What she also did, she made it impossible for Mark Carney to step in right now. And I'm not sure he would want to. If I were him, I wouldn't. I'd continue drinking Bud at Ribfests in a brand new Oilers jersey, just as normal average Canadians do. Dominic LeBlanc is a loyal old soldier for Justin Trudeau. He can come in and he can eat the shit. Mark Carney doesn't want his press conference as finance minister being, oh, wait, so you think GST rebates are not eroding our financial position? You think this is not going to be alienating the Americans? Freeland has put a version of events on the record that you could only ask a loyalist to take on. You cannot go outside the cabinet. In our latest dispatch, we're talking about Carney rumors, Notley rumors. Justin Trudeau, like, at the end of this, Dominic LeBlanc is going to be like 7 cabinet portfolios and Trudeau's babysitter.
Okay. So there's 2 points here.
Are you taking notes?
Yeah, I know, because you're speaking and I have ideas and then I want to get them all down. Okay, so first, let's talk about the version of events that Freeland has put into place. Freeland's version of events is essentially she slaves away to get this fall economic statement up and running. And there's a lot of stuff that's in the fall economic statement that do have hints of someone who does understand Canada's economic problems and challenges and is actually putting some money into or shifting the way or trying slowly to shift how Canada works so that we're a more productive, less debt-ridden country. That said, I am acknowledging that, of course, the deficit is now at 62 billion roughly. This is 20 billion more than what Freeland had wanted, but a lot of about 20 of that billion had to do with a kind of a one-time payout of a settlement to First Nations people. So it wasn't a structural thing, blah, 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 blah. I don't think you're coming to the line analysis for economic analysis on the fall economic statement. Let's just put it that way, put a pin in it there. So there was nothing in the fall economic statement, particularly as it didn't include the GST checks, that Freeland, I think, couldn't have pretty happily put her name to. But let's take a look at the version of events. So she has been a very loyal, shit-eating minister for Justin Trudeau for the entirety of his tenure.
Yep.
I still think that the Carney rumors were always rumors. They were never solidified. Carney never agreed to come on. He's been toying around with these ideas in various ways, but didn't have a firm commitment. I think she slaves away to get this fall economic statement that she knows she's going to eat shit for increasing the budget by $20 billion. She knows she's going to eat shit for that, but she's got some of the productivity measures that she wants to get in there.
Yep.
So it could be perceived for her as a win. Friday afternoon comes around. Justin Trudeau says, "Thanks so much for all your help, babe, but we're shaking things up." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, we're shaking these up." And either she was asked to deliver the fall economic statement on Monday, despite the fact that she knew that she was about to be demoted to be a minister without portfolio, which is a huge demotion, especially for someone who's been as loyal as she has for so long. Or she was basically told, we're just going to take your fall economic statement, but Champagne is going to deliver it, which would explain why Champagne's name was on the order in council. That came up as well. I don't know which of those options it was, but either way, that is like a humiliating blow to someone who has been incredibly loyal to you and eaten a lot of shit for you, quite frankly. So we know that there was at least some talk about her being shuffled around before Friday because of that emotional press conference that she gave. Remember, I think that was on Thursday.
Which now actually makes sense. That was
Which,
on Friday, and if she
oh,
had just
was
been,
that? Oh,
I
was that a
think it
Friday? I thought it was
was.
Thursday. Okay, okay,
Oh, maybe you're
sorry.
right. Could be right.
No, we should double
Time
check.
is a flat circle. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, okay, so anyway, I think yeah, okay, so maybe she had that conversation with Trudeau, then did the press conference where she was emotional, or maybe the conversation about what was happening predated Friday and she was emotional then. We should probably just double check that date, that timing. So anyway, she sits on it, she stews over it over the weekend. Um, Firstly, the fact that Trudeau honestly expected her to take a demotion and then either read the economic statement or put her name on the economic statement and then take a demotion 2 days later, that's insane. Like that is completely nuts. That's like saying, okay, so you're quitting next week, but we're gonna have you give a presentation to our biggest client on Monday. Cool? Like that's incredibly poor, just basic HR, EQ, just insanely off the chain levels of awfulness as a way to treat one of your most loyal people.
I had a buddy, Jen, who worked at a trading desk at a large financial company, and
Mhm.
the company was going through a round of cutbacks. And it got to the point where they didn't leave the desk without, like, to go piss, like go into the men's room. So they'd get up, they'd put their coat on, they'd put their phone in their pocket, they'd grab their car keys, they'd go to the bathroom and pee. Because if they got laid off or fired while they were away from the terminal, they never went back. They were immediately escorted from the building because with one push of a switch, they could blow up $1 billion of market valuation. Chrystia Freeland is the finance minister for a G7 country. She gets fired on the Thursday or Friday and is expected to go out and announce trillions of spending. Hundreds of billions of spending 3 days later. That's insane.
It's completely insane. Now, sorry, I'm trying to figure out. Google has totally screwed up its search mechanism so that I can't find what date that press
They
conference
haven't
happened
screwed it up.
because
They've AI enhanced them.
okay, so I'm trying to find what date the actual press conference where she got emotional was that. Was a Thursday or Friday? I can't remember. But Google's completely screwed up its search mechanism, so I can't just search by date. Oh, why? Why, Google? Why are you doing this to me? Anyway, if somebody in the chat can tell me what date that was, please, please, because I'm trying to
Don't just put
perform
it in the
here.
chat.
Please put it in the chat. Help me, help me.
Oh, and by the way,
Um,
Jen, sorry, 1 second. Speaking of, we will take questions in the chat. Jen, I've deputized a friend of the line. I'm going to pay him in beer. He's going to collate the questions and text them to me, but we'll do that
oh,
later on.
perfect. Okay, so fine. Um, and that kind of brings me to the theory of the case is like, why is Freeland doing this after so many years? Like, the ineptitude and incompetence and problems of the Trudeau government have now been endemic for years. Why now? Why is she refusing to take shit now? Um, and that kind of brings me to what I think the theory of the case is. And again, this is just a theory. So, like, Ms. Freeland, if I'm wrong, like by all means, send me a note, let me know. I think that, like just about every other liberal, conservative, NDP partisan, once people are in the bubble, they're in the bubble, and there's a weird kind of cult-like environment that forms around them, a bunker-like environment,
Sure.
where
Anyone
they
who's
start.
in politics that long goes crazy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like the people start to smell their own farts, and they can't relate or see what's in front of them anymore. And this is a known issue in politics, and it's not a liberal issue. It's just this is what happens when you're in the bubble. And Freeland had been in the bubble for a really, really long time. And I'm sure that she had started to see cracks in the facade of the leadership at certain points. She's not stupid. But my suspicion is that what happened is that after Donald Trump was elected, the cracks got wider. I think she saw Donald Trump was elected and she started to see all the same things that you and I start were seeing. And all of a sudden, I think that created a sort of a rift in the partisan bubble by which light was allowed to emerge. And she started to realize that, holy shit, the entire country is in deep, deep trouble here. And and I'm demonstrating fealty to a leader who is hyper-fixated on maintaining his own brand and his own electability in the face of a 20-point jump, 20-point electoral sort of gap between him and the conservatives.
You say it
And
like
I
it's a bad thing.
Well, and I think that basically that just started to eat at her. I suspect that that started to eat at her. And you and I
Hmm.
noticed this because after Trump was elected, we started hearing stuff about this, the things that Freeland was coming out and saying that indicated to us very clearly that she had a very clear grasp of what the challenges ahead were going to be. She had her priorities straight. She understood what the problems were, and she had her head out of her ass. And then you've got like Justin Trudeau swanning about doing stuff like, you know, taking pot shots at Donald Trump and lauding Kamala Harris at an Equal Voices gala. And I just have a feeling that the lack of ability to prioritize and the lack of the ability to take the threat as seriously as it needed to be taken fundamentally shook her sense of faith in the system that she was in and started to like tear apart that bunker mentality. And this, I think, came to a head with the GST rebate checks, which were so self-evidently stupid, so self-evidently ridiculous for all the reasons that you and I have gone on at some length about. I think internally she balked at that. We all know that that whole system, basically, the GST holiday is still kind of happening, but the GST rebate checks are now no longer happening because the NDP will no longer get by it. So there's all kinds of drama about that particular case. But then you add to that the final insult of being demoted after delivering the fall economic statement.
Hmm.
I think what just pushed her over the edge, and she just said, "That's it, I'm out."
So you and Paul Wells and Justin Ling did a an event today on Substack, and I
Mhm.
would have happily joined in, but apparently Substack only allows 3 users at a time, which
Weird.
okay. You and Justin debated a bit. You reenacted your Oppo days, where you were debating Chrystia Freeland's motivations a bit. I actually think in the spirit of bringing Canadians together, and that's all I do, right? That's what I'm
Yeah.
known for. I split the difference between your positions. I don't think Chrystia Freeland has undergone any particular come to Jesus moment since Donald Trump was reelected. And I've been writing for a couple of years that on the geopolitical scope of things, I think Freeland has been bang on. I don't think there's been a lot of daylight between the line and Chrystia Freeland on
Yeah.
geopolitics since Russia rolled into Ukraine
Yeah.
again in 2022. But what
Yeah.
I think might have changed in the last 5 or 6 weeks is that she's given up on her boss. So
But
I don't think it's
I think we're saying the same thing.
yeah,
Are we
no,
not
but I
saying
don't
the
think it's
same
been a
thing?
worldview change, right? But I think
No, no,
since
no.
2022, she's been trying to get the boss and other members of the cabinet to be like, your expectations are a problem, you numb fucks. Like, we'd better get a military. We'd better like actually friendshore. We'd better live up to our obligations. We'd better be ready on the trade front. And Justin Trudeau sort of looks at her and is like, yeah, but we could also do daycare and dental care. And part of that is the natural tension between a prime minister and a finance minister. I get it. But some of it just looks fucking reckless in the kind of geopolitical environment we're in right now. And one of the things that I think is happening, and it's a coincidence, is that for the last 6 weeks, I think Freeland is becoming increasingly serious about the situations we face. Whereas for Trudeau's own reasons, he's becoming increasingly unserious
Yeah.
because Trudeau's done stupid shit over the years, but he hasn't done his game show host. Like, did you see what, like, I mentioned it in the written dispatch? Poor Jenna Suds and that ridiculous, this is discounted, this is discounted. When things are getting more serious, and I think Freeland is trying to be the one around that table, among a few others, It was like, we better get our act together. Trudeau's like, all right, I have a better idea. 2 month tax holiday.
I
And I
mean,
think I don't think she had to go through any transformative
no, but
worldview.
that's
I think
how is
she just
that
gave up on her boss 2 years too late.
how is that different from what I just said?
It's elegant.
It's
I
I
put
agree
a
with
bow
you.
around it.
I don't think that her
I
worldview
really
changed.
spelled it out for people.
I don't think her worldview changed. I don't think her politics changed. I think that her faith in her boss changed. And I think the reason why her faith in the boss changed is that the world got radically more serious very quickly for us in the wake of Donald Trump's election. Like she's right. That's the problem with all of this. Like she's actually right. I mean, you and I have also given Chrystia Freeland quite a lot of shit over the last few years
She's a terrible politician.
because no, she's a terrible retail politician, right? She's many people have pointed
Hmm.
out that she's got communications problems. By that, what they're trying to say is she talks to people as if they're kindergartners, and it's really annoying. It's very, very grating. Um, this isn't necessarily her fault. It's just some people have a natural knack for being able to communicate with people like humans, and some people struggle with it. You can't have everything. But when it came to the geopolitical stuff, I think you and I have always pointed out that we were always very aligned with Freeland. We thought she understood. She got it. She understood the issues that we were facing. Um, what changed wasn't her politics or her worldview. What it changed was the world around her. And I think that Trudeau has just amply demonstrated an inability to step up to that change. So, the break and the fracture here is probably inevitable. I just don't know where it goes in the short term.
Well, one of the really interesting issues that come up, and forgive me, Jen, I'm just going to recap this for a minute here. My old radio broadcast instincts are kicking in.
Yes, let's for people who are not who are just
Hello.
it's been a
Hi.
day. It's been a day.
It's been a
It's been a
day.
day.
We don't do a lot of these. To be honest, we've been meaning to do one for a while. We had talked about doing one over the holidays, and today became a pretty good day to do it. This is the Line Live. It's an infrequent thing we do. It's not the Line podcast, because with the Line podcast, we're way more professional. We have a producer. We put on better clothes. Well, I don't know if we do that, but we in general we work a bit harder. These live events, guys, it's just meant to be a conversation between Jen and myself. Check us out if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen our website. We're at readtheline.ca. There's a link in the description of this video where if you want to kick us a few bucks and cover the cost of our beer and our snacks, you can do that. You can also just sign up at readtheline.ca. We're here to make friends. That's all we do. But if possible, we'd like to make some money as well. And I want to mention that later on in the evening, one of the things we're going to do, we've already had some questions come in on our website, readtheline.ca. And in the chat here, we are going to eventually call for questions, and a friend of the line is going to do the job of collating those for us and sending them to me. But right now, we're obviously talking about the news of the day. Chrystia Freeland resigns. I want to talk, Jen, I want to get your thoughts on this. Is this a redemption for Chrystia Freeland? Which I think is just a really interesting question, because I've heard people say, like, what does this mean for her legacy? Or does this salvage her leadership ambitions? I will let you go first. I have my own view on this, but you
So that
jump in.
you
What
can
does this
smash
mean
me
for
later.
Chrystia Freeland?
I actually don't think that she resigned with the ambition to turn this into a leadership bid. I actually don't believe that's true. When I read that resignation letter, I was like, everything about this screams like it was written at like 6 o'clock on Sunday, sent to a staff member to proofread, and then popped online at 9:07. Um, I think this was the straw broke the camel's back, and her own dignity could no longer continue to align with the weird cultishness that the Liberal Party has become. Um, so no, I don't think that it's necessarily a redemption arc, because I don't think that there's a credible leadership game there. And also, I would point out to in many Westminster parliamentary systems, the person who's seen to be stabbing the prime minister is never the person who winds up with the crown, even if everyone cheered the stabber in the process. So, I mean, I believe there's a pithy phrase that is not coming to mind instantly about that. But if you actually have leadership ambitions, you are never the one to publicly stake the outgoing guy. So if she had any real leadership ambitions, I think it will be that they'll be quashed here. But the real problem with Freeland remains that She's just not great at the comms side. She's actually really she's smart, she's strategic, she's capable of doing really great things. And I think she's an asset to any government that has her, but not for her. She's not the person who really should be at the front of the parade. She should probably be like the second or the third in the parade. That was a good role for her there. So no, I don't necessarily think it's a redemption arc. And I would also point out, if you are of the mind that the Trudeau government is so irredeemably corrupt and so irredeemably failed for the last 10 years, quitting when Justin Trudeau is 20 points behind doesn't atone for anything. You know what I mean? She still has her name behind X previous budgets. She still has her name behind so many previous policies. And until recently, she was, at least in public, supporting the very stupid GST check handout thing. Like she didn't resign over that. And I can't even really see, and this is where I think versions of events may genuinely differ. I'm not even seeing anything that's actually in the fall economic statement that's worth resigning over. There's no policy here that she actually resigned over. She resigned over here because, you know, these assholes aren't taking the crisis of the day seriously, and I can't support it anymore. So no, I don't see a redemption arc here, and but I also don't see a need for a redemption arc there. I don't see any credible leadership play for her.
I'm thinking very similarly to you.
Okay.
And I heard people today, is this the first move in her
No.
leadership campaign? No.
But also,
No.
like if this were some overly strategized 4D chess thing, I don't think that letter would have read like that.
I agree.
I don't actually think it would have been the murder letter. I think it would have been the thank you so much for the opportunity to serve. I'm going to spend time with my friends and family letter. Right?
I also think I've had a couple of terms of endearment. We're going to go with that I've been using to describe the Liberal caucus recently. Some recent examples of how I've described the Liberal caucus is the No Garumba Brigade, gormless weasels, desiccated husks of former humans, spirits ephemerally drifting through solid objects. Like this is how I've been describing the Liberals recently.
We need to actually do some more brainstorming because I really think this is a rich vein that we should be tapping.
Very literary.
Hmm.
Freeland is part of that.
Of course.
And I know apparently she got a standing O when she went into the caucus meeting today.
Which, wow.
And I do admire what she did today. I do.
I think she made the right call.
But she made it at least months, probably a year and a half too late. And I think this is we're talking a lot about Freeland so far. Let's go up a macro level here. Let's look at the entire government here. I don't think this saves them. I don't think this kills them. This might slightly accelerate their doom. But in the big picture sense, I do think the Liberals had moments of opportunity to save themselves. I think if either the Prime Minister had chosen for his own reasons, and look, Jen, I'm always uncomfortable talking about the breakdown of the Prime Minister's marriage. I don't like playing yellow journalism. But hypothetically, if a year ago in the summer, so about 18 months ago, if the Prime Minister had come out and been like, guys, I'm way down in the polls, my marriage is broken up, I have to focus on my kids, I'm going to go do that. I think the Liberals had a chance. I'm not saying they would have won, but I think that was a moment of opportunity. I think there might have been sort of like a desperate last chance last summer after the St. Paul's by-election loss in Toronto and before the Verdun one in Montreal. Somewhere in that window, there might have been a chance to overthrow Trudeau and at least save some of the furniture. They're through the fail-safe point now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a point that you and I
It's
have
too
been
late.
making. Yeah, you and I have been making this point for the last several months is that there are points of no return where you actually don't have the time necessary to make the political moves you want to do. If the Liberals credibly wanted to replace Trudeau, in my opinion, their point of no return was beginning of the summer. That coup that happened sort of, what was it, June? To me, that was the last, and that wasn't the first of the last. That actually was the last point where you could have credibly staked Trudeau or had him leave with dignity, host a full, robust race where people would have had a summer to sort of think through their options. We'd now be into a very aggressive leadership race right now. People would have been able to generate real money, real support. And then maybe they're voting sort of early spring ahead of the next budget. They get another budget passed, probably with concessions to the bloc. And then the new incoming leader has potentially almost a year, but at least a couple of months to demonstrate some real governing chops before they have to drop the whip. So like there was that to me was actually their drop dead window, and then I heard that window keep on getting extended as the Garumbalis kept on the coup talk. Oh no, it's not summer, it's September. It's not September, it's mid-October. And it's like, no, like the and now the window for this is so, from a practical point of view, is so past that the only way that you can credibly get rid of Trudeau is if you do a Kamala Harris style appointed successor, kind of extremely truncated democratic process to replace him, which will, like it did with Kamala, fail to generate the kind of grassroots support, particularly in a party that has essentially been, whose grassroots have been essentially totally eviscerated in recent years, and power has been totally centralized in the party, right? There is no grassroots, so they'd have to rebuild a grassroots from scratch for that leader. You're still probably going to have to make radical concessions to the bloc to get through another budget cycle in order to pass another confidence motion. My guess is they probably still don't make it at this point. And you're into an election like March, April. So you can't credibly replace a leader on that kind of a time frame and expect to do well. I mean, the last time I can remember any party trying to do that was when they parachuted in Jim Prentice in Alberta, thinking that Jim Prentice was going to be the guy who would save the historic PC party. And of course, this was the guy who led to the election of the NDP in 2015.
Yeah.
You actually need to build a rapport between the leader and people. You need time to build profile. You need time to get name recognition up and off the ground. You need time for people to actually see who this person is and how they're going to lead a party and what their vision is. The Liberals are out of time. There's no more time credibly to do this. And I realize that there are going to be people out there, like the technocrats out there, who are going to say, well, yeah, no, we can technically do it because we could do this. And I'm like, it's not a matter of you not having the procedural right to do it. It's a matter of your being able to be successful in doing it. You cannot parachute a leader in at this late date and have any chance of salvaging anything. You're stuck with Trudeau now. You're stuck with him to the next election. So the only way this ends is with an election that Trudeau will be fighting. I can't rule out the possibility of some, like maybe the anti-Garumba caucus discovers their gorms and they kick him out. Anything can happen at this point in Canadian politics. But if they do that, they're going to be in no better shape with a new leader than they are right now. So you might as well at this point just vote against the government and call an election.
Yeah, there's basically three things that can happen. And I'm talking, I know I'm going to get fucked when like some fourth thing happens, but here's three broad categories of things that can happen.
Sure.
An election brought about either by the NDP deciding they've had enough or the prime minister calling one, who knows? It could be a prorogation to buy time, or it could be some form of chaos unfolding over the Christmas break.
Okay, now I've got a fourth option.
Oh, fuck. Okay. Is it bad?
Nothing happens. They have one more sitting day. They don't have to prorogue.
Oh, nothing's going to happen legislatively.
No, I mean, like, they don't have to prorogue. They literally just, Trudeau has to survive tomorrow. And he's already survived the worst of it with the caucus meeting this evening. So they don't have to prorogue. Everybody goes off. Everybody has a nice holiday. Everybody chills out. They come back. They make a few more concessions to the bloc, but of course they manage to finagle it in such a way that there's effectively no more. I think there will be some more confidence motions ahead of the election, but as we've seen, Jagmeet Singh is not going to not vote for the government, and he has no ability to effectively manage his leverage. So they'll throw a sop to the NDP that the NDP can then take back to their base as a win, and they'll get to the next election. Like literally there's the most likely option here is nothing. Nothing happens. Nothing happens until spring.
Let's just look at a calendar
Okay, I don't. Well, let's look at the calendar.
because tomorrow is the last sitting day. The House will rise
Last sitting
tomorrow.
day. Yep.
Christmas, New Year's,
Hmm.
basically we jump forward in time just over 2 weeks. So 2 weeks and then to the next Monday.
Sure.
That puts us almost, if not exactly, 2 weeks to the date from the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Hmm.
That, it just in big picture terms, is the kind of time horizon we're operating on. If it's chaos, and if they choose to fight it out, which to be honest is what I think they're going to do, and I think the Prime Minister has again succeeded. I think the Gormless Weasels in his caucus had a chance to kill him tonight, and they fucked it up. So I think he's going to make it through the holidays. When is the soonest we could see an election? And I know some of you, I'm just keeping a half an eye, Jad, on the Jen on the live chat. People are asking about the by-election. There is a by-election going on tonight. We're not expecting any results for about another 2 hours, folks. So this is not going to be a by-election live stream. We're trying to keep it just on the big picture here.
No, so I don't expect the by-election will make any difference one way or the other.
No, but I mean,
It's what it does. Is it going to have more of an impact than St. Paul's?
no,
No.
no, no. Well,
So I just don't think it matters.
let's talk for a minute here about everyone, the other favorite Gormless Weasel out there, Jagmeet Singh.
Oh, I had two solid guffaws today, like two solid laugh out loud moments.
Everything is on the table.
Both
Everything is on the table.
both of my laugh
Everything's
out
on the table.
loud moments happened as a result of Paul Wells. So the second one today was
Okay.
when Jagmeet Singh comes out and says, Justin Trudeau must resign. So does that mean you're not going to support him in a confidence motion? And by the way, when I talk about everybody's playing the same playbooks over and over and over again, it amazes me. It amazes me that he can continue to come out and do these scrums where people ask him the obvious question and he looks like somebody's just hit him over the head with a frying pan. Every time. Oh, so does that mean you're going to continue to support him on a confidence motion? Everything's on the table. How can you say that you're calling on him to resign, but you're not, but you're going to continue to support him in a confidence? Everything's on the table. I mean, and again, it's the same problem every single time he goes out to do one of these press conferences. He wants to get his quip in. He wants to sound like he's tough and standing up to Justin Trudeau. But then when he's actually challenged on the one actual lever of power that he has, he refuses to press it.
I want to.
And it's been the same press conference every
I know.
press conference since September. It's the same one. And then you have Paul Wells lost it. He lost it. He clearly like got out of his basement, put on a tie, and actually visited the Hill today because
I
he's like,
saw
well,
him wandering around. Yeah.
I ain't missing this today. I was kind of jealous. But anyway, so he's at the Jagmeet Singh scrum, and you can hear him in the back going like, Sir, this is a parliament. You don't control who is the leader of the Liberal Party. All you control is whether or not you give the government confidence. He's just losing it. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. I died. I laughed. It was fantastic. But
The Council of the Federation was meeting today in Mississauga, which is a suburb of Toronto. The premiers and the territorial leaders were there, and Wab Kinew, Premier of New Manitoba. He was I just like, I was popping. Oh, by the way, just as a shout out here, shout out to the broadcast journalists today, because
oh
like
yeah,
the global guys, I was looking at them file web copy and tweets. The CBC and CTV guys were on the air
on
for
it.
hours. One
Props to
of
you
them, I don't even
all.
remember which channel I was watching at this point because I was flipping back and forth, but
I'm
someone got a
exhausted
quick
just
interview.
watching all of the coverage. I don't know how they managed to keep it together for like 12 hours straight, man. That was just a beautiful thing.
It
Well
it
done.
is draining my existential will to live to sit in my basement and eat chips, and these people look fantastic under hot lights all day. But someone just briefly interviewed Wab Kinew out in the Toronto Burbs, and I found myself thinking, "Oh God, if this guy was the federal NDP leader, I don't think the NDP wins, I'm not convinced they even break 100 seats. I think the fundamental problem the NDP has, and I try to tell my NDP friends this and they get pissed at me, the problem the NDP has fundamentally is Canadians aren't that left wing. The NDP does not have a huge talent problem or organizing problem. Their problem is that they are too far out of the Canadian political mainstream. But if Wab Kinew was the
Yeah.
federal NDP leader right now,
Wab Kinew, okay, this is my prediction. Wab Kinew will be prime minister in 7 to 15 years.
okay.
I think he's really good. I think he's an
So you're
NDP
thinking the
leader.
Liberals collapse entirely and we basically go left, right, two party.
Yeah. My
Maybe.
prediction right now, and like I said, I mean, I'm making a prediction 7 to 15 years out. This is really dumb. But my prediction right now
How
is
do you know what's going to happen tomorrow?
no, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But on the greater timeline of sometimes longer timelines are easier to predict than instant ones for a lot of different reasons. Instant ones are way more volatile than longer term ones. But Wab Kinew is going to do a couple of years of service as the Prime Minister of Manitoba as he waits out the conservative swing that is currently enacted. Pierre Poilievre is absolutely going to come to power either next spring or next fall or who knows when, but eventually that's going to happen. People are going to be very excited about it for about 3 or 4 years. And then the conservatives are going to start to fuck up in all the predictable ways that all Canadian governments begin to fuck up. And in sort of 7 to 10 years, it all ends in tears. Very similar to what's happening now, because that is just the cycle of history, right? It's the unavoidable goddamn rung of our time. And in that particular moment, Wab Kinew is going to position himself to either to take over the NDP, if not the next leader after Singh, then maybe the leader after that. He's going to rebuild the party from scratch. The Liberals, who now almost draw their support almost solely from wealthy boomers and wealthy boomer women, will collapse. Wab Kinew sets himself up for a prime ministerial run, just as people are getting sick of the conservative government. I think he has a path to be prime minister in a couple of years, and I think he has a path because even someone like me, a right wing monster like myself, I listen to Wab Kinew and every single thing I've heard come out of his mouth makes good sense to me. He's not. I don't think of him as being someone who's really wrapped up in ideology. He's just good common sense, saying the things that need to be said. I'm sure I would disagree with him on a couple of policy points, but there's lots there that I think an average Canadian can see eye to eye with the guy on. I think 7 to 15 years, he's going to be the guy who's in. And I think he demonstrated that day. But the premier's meeting was a really interesting one and really especially perfect comedic timing for the Freeland resignation as well. Because to me, one of the things that we've been saying at the line is one of the reasons why all of the premiers are going off so half-cocked is because firstly, they're panicked and scared because of 25% tariffs is something to be panicked and scared about.
Especially for key
Um,
industries in every province.
Key industries in every province
Yep.
that
Like
need
like
Canadian
it's
government
not
support.
just the idea of that top
No.
level 25% tariff. Doug Ford's looking at the obliteration of the auto sector.
That's
Danielle
right.
Smith is looking at the obliteration of the oil patch.
Yes.
It's tangible for them in a way that 25% tariff doesn't catch.
Absolutely. I think that's right. But the reason why they're also going off so half-cocked is a direct response of the lack of central leadership from the Liberal Party. The inability of this is the fundamental inability for Justin Trudeau to come into a room with these people and deal with them, and negotiate with them and get them on board in some kind of unifying Team Canada strategy. Like he has just failed to do that fundamentally and adamantly. And I think he's failed to do that as a direct result of the way he's governed for the last 10 years and the goodwill that he has absolutely squandered with the provinces over the last 10 years. But he's also failed to do that just in the last few weeks. Like in their last meeting with the premier's meeting, again, you and I, I'm repeating stuff that you and I have said on the podcast, but he should have come into that meeting with like, all right, this is the strategy. We're going to be Team Canada. We all have to be on the same team. We're going to make concessions to the province to make sure that everybody knows that we're working in good faith, and we're going to parcel out certain responsibilities according to each province's particular sector of challenge. He didn't do that. Like he should have come into that meeting basically saying, Alberta, we're putting a hold on the emissions cap right now because Trump is more important. This is a more important issue, and we all need to get on the same team. But he was fundamentally and constitutionally capable of doing that because that would require him to make a decision that put the interest of the nation above his own legacy and brand building, and he can't fundamentally operate that way. Um, so yeah, I think that what we're seeing with the provinces is that a lot of them are, for example, Doug Ford was off making threats about cutting off electricity supplies, and Daniel Smith was making threats about, Trudeau, if you engage in export taxes on oil and gas, you're gonna foment a national unity crisis. And all the provinces have been kind of going off a little unhinged. But I can't even blame them because that is a direct response to the federal inability to function. It's just the feds have lost the moral authority to govern, to unify, to lead, to create the Team Canada dynamic that they fundamentally need to cope with the current situation. He can't do it. He's lost the moral authority. He's lost the ability to govern the country, literally.
I know.
And in response to that, what we're now starting to see is that the premiers themselves are going, oh shit, Ottawa ain't coming to save us. Ottawa doesn't have the capacity to save us. They're seeing, I think, the same thing that Chrystia Freeland's seeing. This is not someone who is constitutionally or temperamentally capable of leading the nation through this crisis. And they're responding by essentially creating almost an alternative federal voice. And that's what you saw today with Doug Ford taking the lead as the chair of the Premier's Council, essentially coming out and saying, well, we have to be unified, we have to be on the same team, and we have to be able to negotiate with America. The problem, of course, is that these guys don't necessarily have the jurisdictional ability to do that. They don't have a lot of the jurisdictional ability to give America what it needs. So instead, what we're seeing is the provinces trying to parcel out these kinds of highly symbolic moves and gestures to placate the Trump team in the hopes that they're going to get sort of industrial carve-outs for
Yep.
their particular sector.
It could
It's
work.
not a bad strategy, but it's tragic that the Confederation has reached a point of such dysfunction that the premiers are basically having to take on the role of the federal government. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Is that actual moral authority is now devolving to the premiers.
Yeah. I had this weird vibe today, and I want to pivot us to questions soon. So if our friend of the line, who is, I've deputized him with sending them to me by text. Sorry, guys, I am trying to keep an eye on the chat thread there, but it moves so quickly. I just have someone pulling questions out. I want to make 2 points though. One is a point, and then one, Jen, I'm going to pose a question to you, and then I think after that we will go to some questions from the viewers, listeners, and readers. Today had a weird vibe to me of extremely early COVID, like the first days. And one of the reasons I had that is Marika Walsh of the Globe and Mail, God bless her, was like chasing down politicians and grilling them in a way that really reminded me of when it was. Do you remember that press conference, like just as everything was locking down, when
Remember?
like Marika was like, "Do we have a plan for the deadly virus that's in our country?" And they were like, "We're very lucky to have Patty Hajdu as Minister of Health. We are committed to keeping Canadians safe." And she's like, "Do we have a that?" It had kind of the echoes of that today, but something else that really reminded me of those early first days of COVID was the fact that I wrote a whole column about this at the time. Bill Blair was public safety minister or emergency preparedness minister. I don't remember which one at the time. And he was going out there and he was saying, "We have hardened the airports." And I was landing in Toronto just as the shit was hitting the fan. They hadn't hardened shit, but levers had been pulled in Ottawa, and the minister had been assured that the borders were secured. And what I remember happening really at the start of COVID was that the provinces were sending their own teams into the airports. They were sending cops, public health, nurses, doctors, kind of grabbing staff from anywhere they could because the provinces figured out really quickly in COVID that the feds were still in the realm of signaling and communicating and messaging, and that the feds may not have even realized that their levers weren't connected to anything. So Danielle Smith is talking helicopters and drones. Wab Kinew's talking
Military spending.
conservation officers.
Yeah, and he's like, we need to start spending more on the military. Thanks, Premier of Manitoba.
The strongest elected voice right now for a properly funded Canadian Armed Forces is the NDP Premier of Manitoba.
Yeah.
And I think, Jen, you phrased it really well. We are seeing the provinces fill the vacuum. And I had this weird early COVID vibe of, oh, there is something very familiar about all this.
Well, okay, here, I'm gonna first say 2 points. One, Alexa, how many days until January 20th?
Monday, January 20th, 2025 is in 35 days.
35
5
days.
days. That's an election period.
Well, no, the point I'm trying to make is we have 35 days before there's a non-zero chance that we have economy crushing tariffs put in place.
Yeah.
What's the plan? To quote Marika Welsh, what's the fucking plan? Because so far there is no plan. There's no credible plan. There's no Team Canada. Nobody's rowing in the same direction. Nobody has managed to cohere all of the provinces and all of the actors and all the players to some kind of plan. Some of the provinces are doing a decent job. And I've given credit to, I think actually Danielle Smith, for as much as I might criticize her for some aspects of what she's doing, I think she's got the right messaging. I think she's got the right approach. I don't think Doug Ford has the right approach, but he's Premier of Ontario, which is the most populous province. So he's going to wind up in the big boy seat. God help us all. So there's part of it. And then the second thing I would just say is one of the niggling sort of long-term trend lines that I think you and I both have been paying attention to is Canada in a state of slow motion defederation? Are we effectively defederating?
Right now we are, but I don't know if that's transient or if that's the start.
I would make the argument that it's been happening slowly for a number of years now.
Yeah.
As you have ceded more and more moral and actual power to Quebec, you have set the stage for an inevitable devolution of power away from a central federal authority and more power to already powerful provincial authorities.
Yeah.
And I think that after COVID, a lot of faith in the federal government has been shaken for a lot of different reasons. If we go through another serious, potentially existential crisis as a nation, where we have a federal government that can't step into that void, and again, we see the actual decisions and actions being taken at the provincial level, that's going to further a longer term trend of effective defederation. Like, what's to stop that to happen? How?
You know what? You're not wrong, but I will say this. One of the reasons I'm not really worried about like a formal defederation yet is because I think the provincial leaders would welcome strong federal leadership.
Yes.
There may come a time where they won't. I think right now they would. And if Trudeau could find it or someone else could find it, you know, if Prime Minister Suds in a couple of weeks is an excellent advocate of the federal government, or if another election happens, I think right now we're in a place where the provinces would probably be happy to hand some of that back. We'll be fucked when we get to the point where they aren't. And we're not there yet. Even like we talked about this in dispatch, right? Even Quebec's come running back to Ottawa right now.
Yes, that's right. And like I said, when I say slow motion defederation, I mean slow. I mean in generational time scales. I'm saying, like, is Canada, if 50 years from now, going to be the Canada that I'm living in today? Or is it going to be like the independent province of Alberta operating in tandem with a trade policy with Western Cascadia? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we need to go to full catastrophic existential collapse here to say that defederation can come in a lot of different flavors and colors. And I also would point out, like, this is a trend line that is still at a point where it can be reversed. Really strong, visionary. Just a second, I'm going to yell at my son here because he's being loud.
Benefits of being in the Eastern time zone. My kids are asleep.
Yes, that's nice. So you have, actually, my kids should be asleep. So anyway, a strong federal leader that comes in for a 10-year time frame with a really, really expansive, bold mandate for the way he wants to rebuild the country and make it more functional and more healthy, which could be Pierre Poilievre, like, or could be Wab Kinew. Like, I'm willing to put my bets on either. Could fundamentally turn that trend line around. I don't think that just because this is where the trend line has been for the last 20 years, that this is the way that it has to be. We can turn that around and become a stronger, more cohesive, more unified nation. But it's going to need federal leadership that, as of yet, we don't have, and I can't see.
I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And while you are answering it, I'm going to just very briefly turn off my camera just for about 20 seconds here, Jen. I just need to get organized here. We're going to start taking questions in just a minute. I just need to make sure we're organized on that front. I also need to refill my beer.
That's fair.
So, yeah,
I can tell the story. I can take a quick break to tell the story of what I'm drinking tonight. Firstly, I got really down the rabbit hole, the YouTube rabbit hole on ceremonial cacao, which is hot chocolate, as far as I can tell. I am not going to spend $30 for an ounce of ceremonial cacao from like the beautiful unhybridized cocoa beans of Guatemala. But I did find some really nice dark chocolate, like in my cupboard. So I melted it and I put some cayenne pepper in it. And it's actually pretty terrible, but I'm drinking it anyway. And I do think it's helping me stay a little bit more focused. And I'm drinking it in a fabulous mug that was created by a local Calgary potter I got for Valentine's Day, and it has teeny tiny little sperms and an egg in it. And one of the sperms is golden. And
sperm mug. That's
and
great.
then one of the eggs is golden too. I just thought it was the cutest thing ever. And do you want to know who really loved this mug? It's a fun
No.
story, actually. Okay. Christy Blatchford came over to my house for roast beef one time in Calgary when she was in town.
And
And
Blatch
I
loved the
gave
sperm
her,
mug.
she loved the sperm mugs so much. I told her that the potter also made boob mugs. And then I said, well, next time I find this potter, I'll send you a mug. And then she died. Then Christy Blatchford, not the potter.
Is the potter okay?
I think the potter's fine.
Okay. Well, that's great, Jen. Thanks for
Sorry.
sharing that with everybody.
I was just looking for like a slight break from all the heavy Confederation is devolving conversation. So I
Yeah,
decided to
Jen's
talk
like,
for,
you know what? We need to lighten things up a bit. Let's talk about the death of our beloved colleague.
sorry.
No, that's good. You really lifted the mood. This is the line live. We did not have a chance to get organized enough to do a proper The Line podcast. So you've got Jen, you've got me, we've got Chips, we've got a sperm mug, we've got really upsetting memories of the loss of valued colleagues, and we've got lots of news to talk about. A question, Jen, I'm going to put to you, and while you are answering it, we're going to do two things. We are going to get organized in just a moment here. We're going to start taking your questions probably in about 5 minutes. So we'll look forward to doing that. Just a quick reminder, folks, if you're just joining us, we're not just a YouTube channel. We're also a website, readtheline.ca. There's also a link in the description here and on the website of our donations page if you want to throw us a few bucks. We could make money on this, Jen. I think like the chips only cost like $6. And hey, they're GST free now, right? So that's good. We could be one donation could put us in the black for this event here. So we'd love it if you could do that for us. But at the very least,
we could be bought for mere hundreds of dollars.
Honestly, if I break even on the chips, like I'm content. I had no plans tonight.
If you donate something to The Line, we'll give you a shout out on our channel. If you donate, we'll shout you out.
We'll shout at you the way Jen shouts at her children when they make noise in the background. Say you went for Blatch. I can be dark too, Jen.
Some people go for that. Some
Yeah.
people are into it.
So my question for you, and while you're answering this, we're going to get organized on questions, and I'm going to go refill my beer, which is my real priority here. What do you think the Prime Minister's thinking tonight? And I'm honestly just curious. Like, we've done a little quick psychoanalysis of Freeland and her motives. The reason I asked this, Jen, and I'll turn the mic over to you for a second while I go grab a refill. Talk to some liberals today.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've been saying for the last couple of months is that when these guys lose, and they're going to lose real hard, there's going to be a sudden and profound willingness to admit mistakes that they would deny today. The morning after brings clarity and truth. And I felt a disturbance in the force today. And I don't like referring to the other sci-fi franchise. I prefer to stick with the good one. But I'm going to go with the cliche. There was a disturbance in the forest today, as I think a bunch of liberals who have somehow still been able to hold out hope that, aha, there will be a scandal, or the Indians own Pierre Polyev, and we are one Robert Fife scoop away from the end of that awful man. I think not a huge number, but a few liberals in important places this morning went, oh my God, we're done. And if we're not done today, we're done in a week, or we're done in a month, or we're done in 6 months. And I think when I keep telling liberals, it's been a theme we've been writing about. When the walls of denial break, they break hard. I think there's a lot of liberals who have slowly gotten used to the idea of losing. I think there's some have not done any of that emotional work yet, and they might have gone through a lot of it today. What do you think is happening right now? Well, ironically, he's literally at a fundraiser, but when the prime minister either gets home tonight or back to the hotel, wherever he's staying, what do you think goes through his head? And while you're answering that, I'm getting a beer. I'll be right back.
Well, I'd be really interested to be at that fundraiser and to try and figure out what he was being told. Is he being hounded by donors who are pushing him out and who are worried about the state of the party, or is he having smoke blown up his ass, or some combination of the both? And is he which group of commentary is he selecting from? I don't underestimate the ability of someone like Trudeau to put himself in a reality distorting bubble, particularly where his self and his own ego are concerned. Um, my suspicion is what he's thinking right now is, how do I game this out? How do I game this out to a win? Because I don't think that yeah, that's my sorry, it's talking to a blank screen's a little weird, but no, I think that he's sitting there and he's strategizing about how to game it out. Who do I need? Who do I need to convince? Who do I need to bring back on board? Who do I need to promote? Who can I put in cabinet? What do I need to give to whom to get another week, to get another month? I just need to survive it out to the end of the session, to the beginning of the next session. So I think that he's probably in full on rope-a-dope mode. He's just going to take the hits and take the hits and take the hits and take the hits and take the hits with the expectation that he'll come back. Like, I don't think that he is capable of breaking his own delusional barriers. And I think that if he did, if he ever did break those delusional barriers, I think it would probably break him. So I just don't think he can go there. I think he's going to fight it out to the very end. And this is also why I think that his MPs, if they want to vote him out, are going to, if the MPs want to vote him out, they're going to have to vote him out by by voting against the government. I think that's the only way that you can push him out. So my suspicion is that probably the more likely option at this point in history, and again, I would prefer it if you didn't hold this prediction against me, because who can predict anything right now? But I still think the most likely prediction is both the NDP and the Bloc essentially decide that it's time for a spring election. I think they'll break before he will. I mean, today the bloc broke.
Yeah.
Blanchette said it's over. The government's over. We're not. So I mean, I don't think that and unlike Singh, I don't think that I don't think the Bloc can come back and say the government's over and then continue to vote with it. I just don't think that they can do that.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I
No,
think
I don't think there's any part of Justin Trudeau that is sincerely reflecting upon his leadership and being like, maybe I'm in the wrong, like Principal Skinner in the meme, like maybe I'm in the wrong. maybe it's time for me to go. I need to have this heart to heart with my like. No, I think he's gaming it out. I think he's
Something I said about the Liberals a few months ago, and I included the Prime Minister in this, is I think the Prime Minister and key Liberals around him have committed a category error where they're asking a question that is wrong and it's going to prevent them from coming to the answer. The right question the Prime Minister needs to ask himself is, why am I here and what can I do? But we put this in one of our dispatches a few months ago. I think the question they are asking themselves, or he's asking himself, is what that is not my fault explains this situation and what can I do about it? And I don't think when you phrase the question that way, you can never come to the correct answer. So I agree with you. I will say this, outside non-zero chance that he wakes up one morning and goes full on, fuck it. I don't think it's likely. I think it's unlikely. I
I'd put
could
the
see
odds of
him
that at
getting
like
up.
20%.
Yeah, 1 in 5, maybe he gets up one morning and his appointment calendar is just nothing but bullshit, and Trump has been truth socialing about him all night.
No, if Trump truth socials about him all night, he'll never leave.
As a man who has once or twice in his life had his own moments of just sheer fuck it, I don't rule it out, but I don't think it's likely. I think it's got to be the NDP.
I honestly think that there is a 1 in 5 chance that he does have a fuck at a clock moment, but it will go something like this. He'll wake up, he'll look outside, he'll realize that it's a beautiful day that he would rather just spend with his kids. And some he will go out into the wilderness and he will sense the wind upon his face and he will interpret it as God calling him to step aside from the moment. Like it will
Now
be
who's getting writerly?
yeah. Like it's going to be something like that. It's going to be something that shifts in him internally on, on inputs that nobody can understand or predict,
Yeah.
that causes him to go fuck at a clock.
All right.
And I do also think that if Trump actually starts turning him into a punching bag, that will force him to stick around. His ego will not allow him to leave while he feels like he's being bullied. I just don't think he'll do it.
So it's the line live. We've been running for almost an hour and a half now. It's just, and
God, halfway?
yeah, and
Lord, you and I can fill time.
yeah, but
Put us
also
in the studios, champ. We're ready.
yeah, but it's incredible to me that we've lost very few listeners. We haven't
Wow.
lost zero,
Do we
but
need to
we're
repeat any
holding
of
our
our
own.
key points? I mean, like, okay, cool.
To our listeners and viewers, we love you. But it's time to get to some
We did.
questions, Jen. So, how is this going to work? This is just a bit of programming note to everyone who is here. There are a couple of ways you can get us questions. You can post a question on the comment threads in either of the posts. There was a preview post, and there's currently a live post right now up at readtheline.ca. You can leave questions there if you're a paid subscriber. So that's a perk, like and subscribe. Or you can leave them here in the chat, and we haven't figured out yet how to screw you guys out of money on that front. So this is a bit of a loophole you guys can exploit.
We should
We
we
are
should
not the
give
ones picking the
priority.
questions.
We should give priority to the paids. Just FYI.
Okay.
It can't be done. But,
So Phil, if you don't mind, if you could reshuffle that. And the way this is working, guys, Jen and I are not actively following the comments. We can't do everything at a time. But my friend Phil McBride, friend of the line, he wrote a piece for us just last week. He is right now sitting, I assume, in his backyard patio because he got out to a warm climate and he's feeling no pain. He is curating these questions for us and he's feeding them to me by text. And Phil, Jen, I've told him I'm going to pay him in beer. So the line owes Phil McBride some beer. So
factor that into your donations when you donate to the line. We need
exactly.
beer, chips, and a couple of.
Couple of cases of beer.
I think we need $100 to make it even.
Like and
Someone can,
subscribe, folks.
someone can throw us
Smash
$100.
that donate button. It's in the text for this video. Okay. So Phil has asked for the pleasure, Jen, of getting the first question, and I think that's fair.
Okay.
So here's a question from Phil, paid subscriber to the line. Um, Jen, I'm gonna read these to you. You'll get the first crack at answering them, and then I'll take a swing too. So here's Phil. Does Trudeau wait until Trump gets installed, prorogues Parliament, lets some time pass, and then blames Canada's economic woes on the US and tries to run an election against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that I think that a lot of liberals carried on hope longer than they probably ought to have, under the assumption that if Trump got elected, this was going to be great for them.
Yep.
And then when he got elected, suddenly realizes that that was perhaps wrong, that Trump getting elected was simply going to be bad for the country. So if you have, firstly, any chance that I think that Justin Trudeau had of effectively running against Trump more or less died the moment that there were pictures of him sitting next to Trump and Lutkin in that Mar-a-Lago weirdness. Um, and trying to antagonize Trump during an election is only going to provoke a response from Trump during an election. So if Canadians continue to watch the sight of Justin Trudeau bigging himself up by undermining Trump and Trump responding, "Oh, you don't like that, Canada? How do you like 30%?
Yeah.
You like 35?" It's going to become really obvious that this is a man who's willing to put his own self-aggrandizement and his own ego above the national interest. And that is going to be a really, really hard play for the Liberals. It's going to be hard for them to suggest that they are going to be well adapted to manage this situation when in that kind of, if that's how the dynamic is playing out. So how exactly they are going to run against Pierre Poilievre, making him sound like this crazy lunatic extremist Donald Trump buddy, while at the same time not antagonizing Donald Trump to the extent that they put the national interest at risk. It's pretty, that's that's a needled thread. That's a needled thread. So I think their actual entire election strategy has more or less been thrown out the window here.
To Phil's question, Jen,
Every single time that they take the pot shot at Trump, it makes them look less serious
Mhm.
and it makes them look less up to the challenge, the existential crisis that they're facing.
Yeah, I'm going to answer Phil's question directly. Phil, he might try that, but it won't work. And one of the things I noticed about this government over a year ago, it was really interesting, and we definitely wrote about it in some of our dispatches, is that the Liberals were acting panicky without appearing panicked. What I mean by that is in their press conferences, they were calm, they were on message. The prime minister always knew his talking points, but they were rolling through communication plans so quickly that none of them had time to work. Like it takes time to put a new message in the field, to have your trained seals in Parliament, repeat it, to get your social media posts going, for the voters to see it, for pollsters to detect any movement. It takes 7 to 10 days for a communications plan to work. If you have really good polling and you're willing to spend money on it, you might be able to capture it in 4 or 5 days to see if it's actually working. These guys were cycling through messages in every 2 or 3 days. They were getting in their own way. They were stepping on their own dicks, which is, obviously using technical jargon. I think I'm seeing more of that. Today it's guns, tomorrow it's GST rebates, then it's, feminism, and then it's abortion, then it's standing up for a woman's right to choose, and then it's, hey, Pierre Poilievre, he's a bad guy. They don't have a consistent plan. Their messaging sucks. So if they do come up with some kind of anti-Trump strategy, do they have the discipline to stick to it for more than 3 days? Or does Trump fire off some Truth Social post or Musk tweet something and the PMO is suddenly knocked reactive again? So they might try exactly what Phil's doing, and I think Jen's right. I think that's been their plan all along, but it's not going to work, and I think they'd get in each other's way if they tried.
Yeah,
So
so the other thing I would just say is there was an interesting Substack post by Dan Gardner, who is a sort of longtime writer and columnist, and he made this an argument that I've seen get made in a lot of different corners by what I would call kind of Laurentian consensus men who have a certain view of themselves and certain view of the nation's standing in the world. Let's just put it that way. And Gardner's position was people like Trump are brutal men who only understand shows of strength and brutality, right? This is long-term, I mean, this is basic psychological bully logic. You're dealing with the bully. You understand you're dealing with the bully. What's the best thing to do? It's not to conciliate the bully. It's to be an asshole to the bully. And the bully will respect you and leave you alone. All of us have been in this situation. All of us have sort of encountered this. But I don't think Dan's piece, while his analysis of power dynamics was correct, I think that that kind of logic fails to take a really crucial thing into consideration. And that is, yes, Donald Trump is the type of man who will respect strength and brutality, but we're not strong. And we don't know how to be brutal. And we don't have the capacity to be brutal if we want to be. We have undercut ourselves psychologically, economically, and militarily for so long that we simply do not have the collective ability to respond with strength.
Well,
And
yeah.
the problem here is that you've got people like Justin Trudeau going up there saying, I respect a woman's rights to choose, because he thinks that's a show of strength, because he doesn't actually understand what strength even is. And instead, to me, that came across as a demonstration that he was rattled, that he lacked emotional and personal restraint. And to me, it was a pretty clear example of demonstrating weakness and not understanding the difference between demonstrating strength and demonstrating weakness because you've never had to. And that's, I think, the fundamental problem with the running against Trudeau's strategy or running against Trump's strategy is that a lot of Canadians are very compelled. But I mean, we saw a little bit of Doug Ford doing this. We're going to cut off electricity exports. We're going to make strategic retaliations and blah, 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 blah. And that plays really well to a certain type of base that still has a certain degree of their identity and national pride wrapped up in Canadians being able to have dignity. In World War II, we stood up for ourselves without understanding that we have so degraded our capacity for strength vis-a-vis the Americans to such an extent for so long that we have no leverage or very little leverage here. We can make smart strategic decisions. There are things that we can do. We're not helpless, or we're not without agency, but we've degraded ourselves to such an extent that a show of strength isn't really a likely possibility. And we just have to work with that reality. And a real show of demonstration of strength isn't taking pot shots at Donald Trump. A real show of demonstration of strength is getting the provinces on board on a Team Canada strategy, rebuilding fundamental economic resilience by destroying interprovincial trade barriers, demonstrating message discipline, not rising to every single taunt or bait, not allowing yourself to get rattled, demonstrating emotional discipline and restraint more so than the other pace, and basically being smarter than our adversaries and smarter than our opponents, which right now we're not being. And my suspicion is that because you were dealing with a Trudeau and the people around him who don't seem to understand the difference between actual strength and shows of strength, if they try to run an anti-Trump strategy in an election campaign, what they're actually going to do is put on full display the depth of their weakness.
I probably need to knock back 7 or 8 more of these delicious German beers before I really want to talk about this in any depth. But Jen, I remember certain days as a kid you remember, and this is going to be a little maudlin, so I'm going to make this point quickly. I remember the first day as a kid when I realized I had to hit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I was a nice kid. I didn't like hitting people. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to go about my business. But I had a bully. He was a year older than me, and he was giving me a really hard time. And I realized the first day I was going to have to fight him, and I was probably going to lose. But it was the only way to make it stop. Canadians aren't good at that. That is the core of our expectations are a problem thesis. We're not a country that knows how to fight. And I've seen a couple of comments pop up in the chat as it's scrolling by. People going, "Hey, come on, we used to know how to fight. We used to." And then we bought the national myth that we're peacekeepers and we nerfed our incredibly violent national pastime. And I'm okay with that. I don't want my 10-year-old coming back with concussions and missing teeth. but I think we're not as good at the grit as we might need to be.
Yeah, and
So
also we're not even necessarily talking physical violence here. We're not talking physical fighting. But yeah, okay, we
we
can
might be.
well, okay, well, look, if we're talking physical fighting, I've got some real bad news for you. Like, we've lost. We lost before it started. So I'm talking more about psychological fighting and strategic political and economic fighting here.
Okay.
Sure, it's totally possible that we can make some strategic trade retaliatory tariffs on certain areas that will pinpoint some pressure on a couple of senators and whatever, sure. I've got do that. No issue there. But again, we've made this point on our podcast previously, Matt. America can fundamentally destroy us economically, existentially, for the cost of a slightly increased price at the pump. The disparity of economic and political power is so great. We are so small compared to America. This is something that I think very few Canadians conceptualize or really understand. We think of ourselves as being like, oh, well, we're not as big as America, but we still, punch above our weight.
We
No, we
punch
don't.
under our weight.
We punch under our weight.
We're one of the largest economies in the world, and we can barely field a battalion.
But it's not even
So
just, it's not even just an economic or just in military force here. We punch radically under our weight in productivity. We punch radically under our weight in innovation. Part of the reason why we've jumped up our immigration as high as we have has
just to
been to
sustain a weak economy.
is to sustain a weak economy and sort of drive up our GDP numbers. We can't get stuff built in a reasonable time frame. We can't build houses, we can't build pipelines, we can't build transit projects on a reasonable time frame. We have no industrial capacity, like we have no industrial strategy, I should say. There are things that we can do to improve these things and change these things and obvious low-hanging fruit that we can attack on some of this stuff. But for 10 years, we haven't. We've atrophied. One of the ways in which we've atrophied was also, by the way, our federal civil service is highly sclerotic, highly, I don't want to say corrupt, but essentially self-serving at a minimum. We are not nimble, adept, fast, innovative. We cannot respond to some of the threats that we are now facing quickly and effectively. We're going to need to change that, and we have to change that for our own sake. But right now, Trump is coming in at his strongest while we're coming in at our weakest. So you want to like put on like a retaliatory tariff on Kentucky bourbon? Go for it. Have fun with that. But don't mistake that for a show of strength because it isn't.
And thus concludes our answer to the first question. So we're gonna try, Jennifer, to do that in a bit more of a concise way going forward here. All right, let's see what Phil has for us next. Okay, Phil says we've got a bunch of these that have come in or variations of same, but this one is Kelly, and I remember you, Kelly, out in Calgary or near to it. Kelly wants to know what is a realistic floor for the Liberals in terms of percentage. That's a really interesting question. I would guess somewhere between 15 and 20, but I actually think the more interesting question is seats. One of the things we talked about, Jen, a lot after 2021 was that the Liberals were in deep trouble because of how many of their seats they won by 1% margins. And if the polls moved 2%, they could lose 30 seats. Well, the polls have moved 20%. So,
And are we talking in this election or next election?
well,
Are we
whenever the
talking
next
about a
election
spring
is, what
election
is
or
the
a fall
realistic
election?
floor?
The
I don't
realistic
know.
floor is zero.
No, I don't think it's zero. I
No,
think
there's no bottom.
no, I think certain things would absolutely have to go completely batshit to get the Liberals much under 15. I think it would take a catastrophic meltdown to get them under 25. But could I see us drifting to a stage now where the realistic Liberal seat floor is 25? Yeah, I can
I
see
don't
that.
rule out the possibility that there is no Liberal Party in 5 years.
No effective party, but I think you would have.
No, I don't rule out the possibility that there is no Liberal Party in 5 years. I don't know that I don't think that I wouldn't put my odds on that possibility being high. I think that there is always sort of a contingent of nostalgia nostalgic boomers who will string it along until they die. I mean,
I think
sure,
that's it, yeah.
maybe, but it depends on the time frame you're talking about here. I think that you have to look at every party and assume that the highest is all and the lowest is zero. There's no guarantees beyond that. Now, in the next election, I think you're probably right. 15 is probably about as low as they're going to go in the next election. 25 is probably more likely. But,
I think,
the
Kelly,
election after that, I don't know. I don't know.
I think, Kelly, what I'm doing is I was just talking to my buddy John Wright, who's a pollster, about this a couple weeks ago. John has done some polling that has shown that with a new leader, up to 27% of the voters would be open to voting Liberal. Their actual number is lower than that. That's sort of their ceiling right now, is about 27%. With Justin Trudeau's personal approval at about 15%, the realistic answer, and I know it's vague, the Liberals right now in an election would be somewhere between 15 and 27%. With Trudeau at the helm, it would be on the low end. With someone new, it might drift up, but it might not. And my honest gut feeling at this point is that they've waited so long that it's too late. They're gonna, I suspect, like, again, this big broad band between 15 and 27. I think they're gonna split the difference, maybe trend a bit to the low end. That's just like a wild ass guess. We'll see what the actual campaign is, but that's where I would come down on that. Next question. All right. Andy asks, Liberal diehards are hanging on to the belief that Pierre or some backbencher make a fundamental error and Canadians come running back to the national governing party. So is there any chance the Conservatives can still fuck this up? Straight up answer, yes. The
I don't
Conservatives
think they can fuck it up that badly.
I think that's it. So right now the polls are showing the Conservatives somewhere around 220 seats. They could fuck up 40 seats and still win a 10-seat majority. Like, they have such massive margins to build in a margin against fuck ups. I also think, to a pretty astonishing extent, Jen, I think Canadians stopped paying attention months ago.
Mhm.
I don't,
Right.
like, if you right now, I'm just taking a peek at our numbers, 1,100 people are with us right now watching this.
Mhm.
None of you are normal. We love you, but someone who cares enough about politics to follow along the two of us in this now almost 2-hour live chat, you are the anomaly, guys. Most Canadian voters tuned this out many, many months ago. Is it possible Poilievre or some Conservative MP pisses in a mug on camera or something? Yeah. But how many
In fact,
votes does that knock
yeah.
off
And I think
now?
you have to assume that they'll do that. You have to assume there's going to be a bozo eruption. You have to just operate under that assumption. I don't think it's going to be enough to change the narrative. I don't think it's going to be enough to turn anything around really significantly. It might lose them a seat or here or two or there or whatever, but
So there are always right now, of the 220 or so seats the Conservatives are set to win, 10% of them are the 10% closest. 20% of them are the 20% closest. So if you start having huge screw ups, yeah, you could lose some of the ones at the margin. But
like I also just don't see a lot of evidence that the Conservatives are screwing up.
the last two Conservative campaigns have actually been surprisingly disciplined. And
Well,
that's
I know that,
something I
but I
think
mean,
people don't remember. Conservatives ran pretty good campaigns.
you and I were both pretty skeptical about the Pierre Poilievre Conservative Party. We had our concerns going in, and I think that to our admission, we were proven very wrong. The leads that they are now chalking up are beyond anything we could have imagined only a few years ago. And also everything that I'm seeing from this party. Now, this gets a whole other issue of how they're going to govern. I'm talking about how they're managing their party, demonstrates a party that has been rigidly disciplined.
No.
There have been very few bozo eruptions. There have been a couple here and there, but very few. And when people try to catch Pierre out on a scandal, he just leans into it, and his polls numbers go up another 0.5%. So he seems to have found the secret sauce for winning people over in this particular moment of political history, which won't always work for him, but it's certainly working for him now. And I just don't see a lot of evidence that the sloppy, undisciplined bozo eruptions that we've seen in previous conservative tenures are happening anymore. Like the last year and a half of this conservative party has been extremely cohesive, extremely unified, and extremely disciplined. More so than I think you and I would have imagined possible.
Yeah, but I would also say the Aaron O'Toole 2021 campaign didn't have bozo eruptions either. I think the Conservative Party as an institution is better. They're just better at this than they used to be.
Yeah,
One of our
they got
commenters
much
just
better.
said, one of our commenters just said, pissing in a mug on camera is a very specific example.
Yeah, it
Someone
literally
wasn't
happened.
paying attention a few years ago.
Yeah, that literally happened.
Look
Literally
up
happened
conservative
on
mug
camera.
piss.
Yeah, Google it.
Google that. You're welcome. All right. Let's see what else we got from questions. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just scrolling. Guys, I have a very serious question for you regarding the day's events.
Okay,
What the fuck?
I don't know.
I
Who knows?
I don't know how to answer that, but I agree with the sentiment.
It will go down in history as one of the most momentous days in Canadian history in recent memory, but no one yet knows why.
All right. Question from yeah, exactly. Question from Ken. Upon Pierre Poilievre assuming office and inevitably pronouncing the books are incredibly bad, totally unforeseen shape, blah, 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 do you see any prospect that PP and his ilk will, well, act radically and do something sensible, like dramatically downsize the size of the federal government, meaning programs, civil servants, etc.? Or as an alternative, do you see that it'll essentially be business as usual, this time conservative style? Gosh, Ken,
The
that's the
million-dollar
question.
question, isn't it?
Yeah. Um,
Everybody around Polyev keeps on telling me that he's gonna come in with a wrecking ball, but he's not gonna come in like a Stephen Harper incrementalist. He's gonna do the shit that needs to get done. He's gonna
more
do
th
the stuff that's hard.
more than
All
that,
convinced.
more than that, I've been told repeatedly that the conservatives actually do have a pretty well-developed policy book that they're hiding. And I don't mean that in a nefarious way, but I think they have made the decision to announce as little policy as possible before they absolutely must. That is an unanswered question for me, and I think for Jen as well, whether or not these guys are going to be brain rotted by too much time spent in the social media war trenches. Smart people I know and trust in the Conservative Party assure me that there's a pretty robust policy wing that is churning out data and making plans. Are they? I don't know. I've been spun before. So Ken, that's my honest answer. I hope so. Because I do think, and Jen, here's the thing. I think Pierre Poilievre is going to have a window of opportunity to be bold.
Generational mandate. He's gonna have a
Yeah,
once in a generation mandate to actually, I mean, we were talking a little bit about slow motion defederation. He is going to have a once in a generation opportunity to reverse that trend, to set Canada on a new course, to set a new vision for the country and what the country is here for and what we're all about and why we're all unified. He's going to have a once in a generation opportunity to blow up significant chunks of the federal government and rebuild it from scratch. And that once in a generation window is probably going to be over in 3 years. So if he doesn't make significant changes off the bat, basically from day one rolling in, he's going to squander his momentum, and this all ends in tears in pretty short order.
I agree.
But these people, I think, do understand that. So, whether or not they choose to go status quo business as usual, whether or not they choose to take up the mantle of the moment is really going to be entirely up to them.
Question from Michelle. In your opinion, who is now the best person for the Liberal Party to nominate as leader? That's a great question.
Wab Kinew.
Hmm. Rachel Notley.
Mm, I take Wab over Rachel.
Yeah, I would have said Wab too, but you said him first.
Yeah.
My assumption, and this is going back to where we started this, it can't be any of the people around Trudeau right now. They're too tarnished. And I also think this is something I don't know if, like, I know I've said this a lot already tonight, but I don't know if I can ever say it enough. It's going to get worse for the Liberals. This is not their rock bottom. This gets worse every day. Every week that goes by is going to be a fresh round of humiliation and another seat sliding into the likely conservative column. So I think by the time this is done, everyone is wiped out.
I don't
Everyone who is associated with this is wiped out. I think Mark Carney has figured that out. But I also, can I make a point, Jen? And forgive me, this is a little bit out of sequence. We're talking a little bit earlier, I think, how the Liberals have been kind of going, ooh, there's skeletons in Pierre Poilievre's closet. They've got weird conspiracy theories about his wife. Like, there's a lot of Liberals out there who have invested way too much in absolute bullshit conspiracy theories. You know what the smart person's conspiracy theory is?
What's the
Mark
smart
Carney will
version?
save us.
Yeah.
It's bullshit, but it's better bullshit than Pierre Poilievre is an android being controlled from New Delhi.
And I also
Mark
just
Carney is not going to save the Liberals, but for a certain brand of liberal who can't give up hope yet because of all the emotional sunk costs, but they also know that a lot of what their friends is saying is just Looney Tunes. Mark Carney will save us is a socially acceptable, sufficiently urbane brand of batshit liberal copium. It is batshit liberal copium, but it looks good in a suit. So I don't think any of the names under consideration right now. I could tell you who a likely interim leader could be. I could see a Dominic LeBlanc doing it
the thing
among
I would
the
just say is like I wouldn't
15
I
other
mean
jobs.
if I had to pick someone from the current Liberal caucus, I'd probably go with like an Anita Anand. But I think the thing that I think furthers to your point, and I think your point is actually horrifically understated. Not only is this going to get worse, but every week that they are hanging on to power in this particular environment, when they've effectively lost, if not if not the legal authority to govern, then certainly the moral authority to govern. So every week that they string this out, the cost of holding on to that power goes up and up and up. So I mean, the literal cost of power goes up and up and up because they have to make more and more and more deals in order to try and maintain power in the face of a very successive conservative motion. So the financial cost to the country goes up and up and up, although they've managed to restrain that in the federal economic statement. So props to them. It's also probably why they lost the block. So so the risk of a financial cost of their power increases with every week that they wait, every month that they wait. But the psychological and the moral costs go up and up and up every week and every month that they wait. The resentment that they engender from the electorate goes up and up and up. So like the actual cost of holding on to power under these circumstances, doesn't go up in a linear way. It goes up logarithmically. Like it goes up dramatically and it builds on itself and compounds on itself with every successive week. So the costs of sticking around are material, they're psychological, they're spiritual. But here's the flip side of all of this. And again, I'm just going to yell at myself. Thank you. What are you getting for that payment? What are the Liberals getting beyond the fact that they're in power, and by being in power, they keep the mean, bad Pierre Poilievre at bay? Okay, fine. That's what you're getting. What are you buying for this increasingly pricey, increasingly costly clinging to power? And I think that the thing that I would just point out is they're buying fuck nothing. They haven't passed a single piece of legislation, a significant piece of legislation since the House has been in session. They have no legislative agenda. There is no vision. There is no plan. There's vague talks about a half-assed daycare program and a half-assed dental care program and a pharmacare program. But like these are not grand visions for the country. These are not world-shattering Tommy Douglas style social welfare programs. Increasingly, as the cost of power is going up and up and up, what they're buying is less and less and less. And the fact that so many liberals can't seem to understand that they've reached the diminishing returns curve on power is just sad.
I have breaking news, Jen.
Oh no.
What kind of breaking news do you think I'll be bringing you at 11 o'clock?
Is he
Your time?
resigned? Did we just completely no?
No.
Great.
What else happens late at night?
Sex scandals?
I like the way you're thinking, but no. Okay. I'm going to read you something.
Okay.
The great state of Canada is stunned as the finance minister resigns or was fired from her position by Governor Justin Trudeau. Her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. She will not be missed. Donald Trump, Truth Social, 22 minutes ago.
All right. Moving on.
You knew he'd notice. And I think this is something that our liberals have not engaged seriously with. Mr. Trump and his team are watching.
Of
And
course,
we
they are
have
watching us implode and they're laughing.
today undercut our negotiating position. So
Well done,
great.
everyone.
All right. Question from Gordo. This is a quick procedural one. What is the earliest possible date in which there can be a non-confidence motion? How soon after the House returns in late January? Gordo, honest answer, that depends on what the Liberal caucus does. It probably can't be tomorrow, but if the
No,
Liberal caucus absolutely implodes and 50 of them don't show up in the House, they won't have quorum. So there is no
yeah, and
easy answer to that, Gordo, but it can happen pretty quickly.
I think that also the opposition's run through all their opposition days for the year.
Yeah, but
So
if there's no liberals in the chamber.
yeah, again, you need a procedural nerd to answer that question. We're not procedural nerds enough to be able
No,
to.
but I do remember once in the Martin minority, the government almost fell because too many liberals were taking a pee at the same time. So if enough of them just quiet quit, it can be soon. But so Gordo, let's make this commitment to Gordo. We'll find out and we'll
We'll find
tweet
out
it.
for the next dispute. We'll ask our procedure nerds like what the next day would be. Like I'm reasonably sure that the Conservatives are literally plotting right now to figure out what their next opposition day motion, confidence motion vote motion is going to be and when
Yeah.
they can pass it. But I also think that presuming they get through tomorrow, and I think they will. I don't think the Conservatives yet know when their opposition days are going to be. Like they're not going to know that until way closer to when the House is back in session.
And there's
So
always proroguement too.
and
Like if
there's
the
always
prime minister
proroguement as a
loses,
possibility. Yeah, so I don't think that is an answerable question at this point in time, but we'll ask it anyway for you.
our next question was from John, and it's on the issue of proroguement, and it was simply, what do you think the chances are that he prorogues? John, buddy, honestly, it depends. Like, if by Christmas morning, 110 of the Liberals' 150 some odd MPs have signed a letter demanding the prime minister resigns, I think the odds are pretty good. If it's not that, who the fuck knows? Like, honestly, John, buddy, like I'd give you an answer if I had one, but like we have to wait a couple of days. We're gonna have to just see
Yeah,
how
I
that
mean,
unfolds.
he's not going to need to prorogue tomorrow because
But he
there's no
might over the
no, well, he
holidays.
might, but I mean, there's no confidence motion on the floor, and we're heading into the election. We're heading into the holiday break. So I think it's going to be January before we can have that conversation. And I mean, the world could be gone by January at this point. So I just it's not again, it's a non-answerable question at this point.
Jen,
I would say the answer is the odds are non-zero.
you and I each have a personal question.
Okay.
Matt, are you drinking Hacker Shore? Yes. Jen, what is that bottle on the table behind you?
Oh, that's Greek Retsina.
Okay. That's it. That was that question. All right, back to the rest. I wish I had more Hacker, by the way, but I don't. Jay Boudouin, sorry if I butchered your name. Do you think the NDP can continue to support the Liberals after this without their own numbers tanking? And related, do you think the whole pension thing is the real reason Singh won't just announce that he's lost confidence in the government? I used to think that was just conservative trash talking, but now I'm not so sure. I'll take those in reverse order. I don't think it's that. I think Trudeau Singh is wealthy enough that he's not banking on his pension. He'd like it. Who wouldn't?
Well, yeah, but there are people in his caucus who are.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's correct.
And I think
I
that
also,
February is kind of the magic date for a lot of them, but not all of them.
yeah.
So,
And I also think the problem for the NDP strategically is that they're probably going to make gains against the Liberals in the cities and get wiped out by the Conservatives everywhere else. The NDP caucus, best case scenario, unless they completely catch the upside in a margin of error swing on the polling, their best case scenario realistically is that they hold roughly the size of their caucus. And they're in a pretty good position to lose a lot of them because there aren't enough urban seats where they're going to beat the Liberals to offset what the Conservatives are about to do to them everywhere else. I think that's the issue for the NDP.
I'm also not entirely sure that they're losing anything by continuing to prop up the Liberal government. Because right
Well,
now,
look,
Singh,
do they
Singh
have
is
more influence now or when Polyev has 230 seats?
well, and not only that, but they like right now Singh can trash talk the Liberals and actually bring home the odd little tidbit from whatever he can negotiate out of a confidence motion. The Liberals are collapsing, so if you're the left, where are you going to go? You're going to go NDP. So it kind of is in a weird way, even that he's incentivized to be a bad politician at this particular juncture, where the base that he's actually losing are more sort of classically working class people who are culturally more aligned with the conservatives. That's where those are the people he's losing with by continuing to prop up the Trudeau Liberals. So it seems to me like Singh's strategy is to write those people off, admit that he's already lost essentially the blue collar working class private sector union types, allow the conservatives to eat his lunch there, and hope that he can make up the gains when the Liberals collapse. So I'm not sure that he's losing very much by like he's embarrassing himself personally and he's causing me to laugh out loud every time he goes and does a scrum. But like what's his dignity worth, right? I don't think he's losing anything electorally, and I think he may be gaining some pensions for, if not himself, then his caucus by holding out. But I do think that February is probably the magic date for enough of his caucus being vested in pensions. That makes me think that sort of the incentives for continuing to prop up the government probably collapse sort of February, March, which is just ahead of the next budget. This is why I've always had my money on a spring election.
I think we should, like, my preference is to call an election tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, I agree with you, Jen. I think that timeline makes sense. The NDP caucus will vest their pensions. And I don't think this is a Singh thing. I think he is looking after some of his people.
Also, nobody wants to drop the writ before Christmas.
And
No
I
one.
think as well, no one wants to campaign in January. I don't buy the arguments I've heard that we can't, that we're somehow incapable of it. But I think people would rather have an election in April.
Yeah.
So we only got a few questions left, and we've been doing this for almost 2 hours now. God bless you. More than 1,000 people are still here gabbing with us. This is The Line Live. Matt Gurney and Jen Gerson. We do have a website as well as a YouTube channel. If you're on the YouTube channel right now and you haven't subscribed to it, you're hurting my feelings, and I'm very sad, and I'd like you to fix that. But if you also haven't signed up at readtheline.ca, please do that. A free account gets you most of what we do, and it also gets you into our ecosystem, and we can then slowly wear you down with appeals to convert you into a paying customer. But don't tell anyone I said that. Jen, I'm happy to say we have turned a profit on this evening, but I would like to turn a bigger profit. There is a donate link at readtheline.ca where this post is up, and also in the text of this video description. If you're enjoying what we're doing, and if you hate us enough that you want us to do more of them, donate generously. Donate big, donate often. And Jen and I will have the neurological response of going, when we do this, our pleasure centers are activated and we will do more of them. And the best way to do that is with money. The other ways cause logistical and moral problems. So money is the easier way to do this. Find that donation link below. We have a few more questions, Jen. I think we can wrap it up after this. Phil, God bless you. Thank you for your help. I think we won't take any further questions other than what you've sent. But Jen, let's get into those last round of questions. And Jen, so you know, Phil did prioritize by paid questioners first.
Appreciate it.
Some of the questions we might get might also be from paid subscribers, but he as best he could, he prioritized the paids. Okay. Jen, this is a question specifically to you. What do you think the NDP thinks about Singh and his leadership? And it's kind of a follow-on of what we were just talking about a moment ago.
I think that a lot of the people in the NDP are just in pain and demoralized, frankly. I have not talked to a single person from the NDP who's like, that Singh is really killing it. Like, there's just an overwhelming, I can't. From a lot of people who are deeply involved in NDP politics, there's a real sense that Singh is squandering a once in a lifetime opportunity to cement the party as being the going concern of the left. And I think that that's correct, by the way. Correct. We'll have to see whether or not Singh's strategy or lack thereof actually punishes them, because I've always kind of had this lingering suspicion that the NDP, both people who support the NDP and who are NDP inclined, like not being in power. I think that they're sort of psychologically inclined to be and see themselves as perpetual people who are perpetually in opposition. They like being able to criticize power from a place of platform and authority, but they don't actually want the compromises that go along with real power. So I think they kind of tie themselves to that psychologically. That's my theory. It's just by the way they act.
I think
we're going to have to stop that, by the way.
I think the problem Singh has had, I don't know if it's a political problem or a personal problem, maybe it's both, is that Singh isn't comfortable telling the truth about his position. A guy like Jack Layton probably, and look, I'm not one of these Canadians who puts Layton on a pedestal, but I think Layton was more comfortable knowing there were real limits on how high he was ever going to go, and he was going to work the fuck out of his ability within those limits. Singh he doesn't do this much anymore, thank God, because it was pretty awful to watch, but he used to say, when I'm prime minister, it's like, aw, champ, come on. Layton didn't fuck around that way. And I think the best case for the NDP, and I like dippers. I do. I think dippers are generally fairly clear-eyed in a way that liberals and sometimes conservatives aren't. The best case for the NDP at the federal level in this country right now, and maybe as Jen says, maybe we are on a track to a two-party system. The best case for the dippers is give us a small caucus and we'll do great things with it because we're ruthless. And that ain't Singh.
No.
So what he has extracted from the liberals with the leverage he had and the runway he gave them is pathetic. And what is likely about to happen to him is warranted. And I don't dislike him personally. He's like a good guy.
We've interviewed him here at the Line. We had a great time with him. Like I like him a lot, to be honest with you. But I mean, if you're looking at the leader who can take the federal party away from its position of being, I don't actually want to be power, and is actually willing to take the reins of power and the compromises that go with it, and if you're looking for a leader who can actually, I think, start to make inroads with the working class that have swung conservative, it's not Jagmeet Singh. It's Wab Kinew. He's the future. He's the future of your party. So like I can tell you this right now, I'd vote for Wab.
Here's a fun one from Pat Quinn. Probably not the Leafs coach because he's dead. What do you think is keeping Trudeau around? This must be exhausting for him and his family. Now he has 50 plus MPs from his own party telling him to leave and a president that wants to get him. Well, that's an awfully good goddamn question. I
can only tell you my theory. I can't tell you the truth. I can only tell you what I think. Sunk
costs. Emotionally. I already lost my marriage for this. I can't walk away now.
I think that's part of it. No, I just think that this is somebody who believes that he was put on earth to do this. I think that this is someone who fundamentally believes that he was put on earth to be prime minister. probably by some quasi-spiritual vocation. This is someone I think who was put on earth, I believe, to fight the good fight right to the very end. Um, he derives a lot of his identity and meaning from his ability to be like, I might lose, but I'll never give up. Right? What he doesn't seem to understand is that that's not noble. There's nothing noble about that. That's just, taking your own party into the ground in order to preserve your sense of ego and identity. It's an ego-driven move, but I don't think he sees it that way.
I'm always reluctant, Pat, to psychoanalyze politicians. I don't know. Some of them I know personally, most of them I don't. I'm always reluctant to try and draw sweeping conclusions about people I don't know. But I think one of the things that I think we can say with certainty, and I say this in a nonpartisan way, but I think one of the things we can say is objectively true about Justin Trudeau and his government is that they are slow to react to threat. I've written this column a dozen fucking times over the years. There seems to be either a personality quirk or it could be a workflow quirk. It could be a problem with how information flows to the prime minister, where by the time he realizes he's in trouble, everyone else has known he's in trouble for 2 weeks, a month. And I don't know what it is about this government. It is known, I'm not saying anything that isn't appreciated, that Justin Trudeau from 2015 to Justin Trudeau today has fewer close, trusted advisors. And there hasn't been a lot of turnover and refreshing of those advisors. He is probably not getting good information. I don't know if there's anyone left in his orbit who can take him out for a beer and go, hey, man, you've had a great ride. But I don't know if there's anyone left.
So
I also think, Jen, this is, sorry, I don't mean to pull the dude card here, but let me just say
mansplain me.
pardon me?
Mansplain me.
I am going to mansplain you. I'm going to mansplain all you guys. When my personal life is not going great, you know what is going great? My work life. Because I take all that frustration and guilt and anxiety and despair and I channel it into writing a banger column and getting caught up on my emails. It's going to be a very quiet first night out of the job for Justin Trudeau. So
Matt's not willing to psychoanalyze politicians. I do it all the time because it's fun. I just think that you also can't avoid the conclusion that Justin Trudeau likes power. He likes being the guy. He likes being in charge.
I think Justin Trudeau likes confounding expectations. And being prime minister is how he has done that. And remaining prime minister is how he continues to do that. And quitting is what everyone expects him to do. And losing is what everyone expects to happen to him. I don't think he likes either of those options. So, all right, questions, just a few left. This is a great question. Honestly, this is something we've barely even talked about. Okay, so Jen, let me go back in time about 14 hours. So when we started this broadcast a few hours ago, you started telling me all about your morning start, how it started, the cuddle with your son. 2 hours earlier here in the East. So I was up and at him. I actually had an early start this morning because I had to get one of my kids off to school for an event. So I was up and at him a little earlier than normal. I kind of caught all of this stuff happening in real time. And I watched my entire day's plan evaporate because the plan for today was talking about three things: the fall economic statement, the end of the postal strike, and the apparent decision by the Liberals to walk back the $250 rebate checks. And one of our dear listeners, viewers, let's see here, Bueller 007. That's combining two very different franchises, Bueller 007, but that's fine. He asks, what's the bigger PR disaster, Freeland resigning or not sending out those checks? That's a great question. Freeland resigning tells us a lot more about the state of this government. Not sending out the checks is a bigger deal. And I don't know how connected Canadians are to the news. I don't know how many Canadians never even realized they were supposed to get a check. So like there are millions. This might blow away. I said to all you already, you're the weirdos over here. There are millions of Canadians out there who are never going to know that checks were ever supposed to go out, and now that they're not. Literally millions of Canadians have no idea about any of that stuff. But to the extent that there's that little bit of the people who are not voracious news consumers, but they're casual news consumers, I bet you it's the checks. I think that's going to be the bigger problem.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think the checks were always so utterly regarded as such a pittance, so such a pathetic sort of way to vote by and throw pennies at voters in exchange for their exorbitant tax fees. I don't think that the checks bends the needle one way or the other.
One more question, Jen.
Okay.
Which MP or cabinet minister is next to leave?
Champagne.
Apparently, Champagne was supposed to be the guy who would have read the fall economic statement in the absence or incapacity of Chrystia Freeland, and he wouldn't do it.
And do you want to know who was next on the Order Council after him?
Why don't you tell us and try to keep it together this time?
Randy Boissonneau. Nothing encapsulates the chaos and
So
dysfunction of this government more perfectly than that fact.
let
It's
me actually explain what this means.
okay.
The federal government, much like the United States, has succession plans
Mhm.
in the event that any executive authority, the prime minister, the deputy prime minister, or any cabinet minister is killed, incapacitated, or in some other form out of contact. The Liberals didn't update the succession plans because why would they? They're a shit show that is completely fucking adrift. And because they hadn't updated the succession plans, their succession plans included the automatic apparent promotion to finance minister, a man who recently quit the cabinet because he's a pretendian. And the
No,
Liberals had not updated the paperwork to account for that yet.
I think you have to consider the possibility that we came this close to having our first First Nations
Finance minister.
finance minister.
Our first full-blooded Cree finance minister, yeah. Can you imagine how much money would have been shoveled to the other Randy's company if he had the checkbook?
Oh, we're gonna get ourselves in trouble with that one. Oh, watch it, Matt.
Allegedly. Um, well, I'm gonna go with what Michael Barrett.
We sincerely apologize in advance to the other Randy for any spurious allegations made on this podcast.
Well, I'm just gonna go with what Michael Barrett, the conservative MP, said. He realized you can insult any Randy as much as you want, as long as you never specify which one you're talking about, because you will therefore always have strategic ambiguity.
Yes, but he also said that in Parliament, which enjoys the privilege of not, being subject to libel law. So let's not push it.
Or just donate more for the Lions Legal Defense
Donate
Fund.
more. Donate more in our fight against the other Randy.
You said Champagne, Anand.
Yeah, that's the other obvious one. 2.5 one doesn't know the other. Yeah. I mean, look, the other problem is that at this point, anybody who does have leadership ambitions should be making a strategic exit because they want to quit with enough grace and time to distance themselves from the waning, flagging years of the Trudeau regime. So like the moment is now, right? If you have leadership ambitions.
I'm running out of chips.
I think we got to wrap it up.
Final word?
My husband has very kindly put my kids to bed for me.
He's a good guy.
He's all right.
Final words, final thoughts.
Um, yeah. I mean, it doesn't really fill me with a lot of happy feelings about our national capacity to handle
I think things are great.
my thoughts are in the bad place right now.
By the standards of our live streams, you're actually relatively upbeat.
Well, I'm not drunk this time. I haven't gone full dark Jen, that's true. I haven't gone full dark Jen in a while. I should reconsider that. People love that in small doses.
We've done a very good job monetizing Dark Jen.
Mm.
Um,
It's like the Dark Phoenix. She can't be killed.
Last thought from me. Jen and I have quite a bit for the last few months. And Jen, don't think me unkind, but I've been writing most of these items at the Dispatch. You and I have both covered some of it, but I've been the guy really banging the war drum for months, telling the Liberals you have to get this over with for your own sake. I'm not trying to appeal to king and country. I'm not trying to appeal to Canadian patriotism. In the basest, most crass, self-interested analysis, the faster this is over for the Liberals, the better off they are. And I mean that as a political party because they'll probably have more seats. I think every week that goes by, another seat's going to drift out of reach.
Mm.
They're also going to lose staff. They're going to lose fundraisers. A week ago, if an election had been called, Chrystia Freeland would have been out there with all of her star power trying to win that thing. Can they use her now? A week from now, Anita Anand and Francois Philippe Champagne, are they out of action? To my liberal friends, this does not get better for you. This gets worse. It gets worse until it's over, and then you can start rebuilding.
Mm.
The longer this goes on, the worse it gets for you. And purely as a coincidence, if any of you care to think about this, I'm going to direct you to Mr. Trump's True Social post of about 40 minutes ago. The longer this goes on, the worse it gets for me and for Jen and the 900 wonderful, emotionally broken people who are sharing this live stream with us. This doesn't get better, guys. Everything you have tried for months has not only failed, it has made things worse. The polling done of the Liberal cash rebate was negative. The Liberals are at a point where they cannot find a way to give Canadians checks that does not result in them being less popular. You guys think you're going to do better after Christmas when those MasterCard bills come due? When Trump does come in, we're hit with tariffs, when the carbon tax goes up in a couple of months, everything gets worse for you from here. You have not hit rock bottom yet, and only you can save yourselves. That's all I got.
They won't.
I know.
But I will say this, just to round up our entire point. Um, Chrystia Freeland's resignation letter was extremely validating to us personally because it did definitely suggest to me that we're not the only ones seeing what we're seeing. And I mean, you and I are always very conscious of the problems of audience capture. Like, we don't necessarily want to be falling into the same problem with the partisan bubble of only talking to people who agree with us, right? And only surrounding ourselves with people who see the world we do, because that will distort our reality vision. So it was very, very gratifying for us to read that resignation letter and be like, okay, someone who is in government, in the Liberal caucus, is seeing the same things we're seeing the same problems we're seeing. That was very heartening for me, but at the same time, and the Liberals just lost her. So great. Super. Awesome. Everything's fine.
Jen, I think the country is fucked. We're boned. We are epically boned. But this event has been a tremendous success. And many thanks to Phil for jumping in from his backyard patio and helping us out. Lesson learned, we can't actually we can't do this just the two of us. We definitely need at least one person moderating. It would have been impossible otherwise. So Phil, many thanks to you. Some beer and snacks are coming your way. And for the record, I'm not actually sending you beer. The logistics of that is complicated. I'm sending you money. You buy your own goddamn beer. That's how this works. At our peak, Jen, I think we had something like almost 1,500 people who were watching this, and we're into our third hour now, and we're still at almost 900. So
Oh my
huge
goodness,
thanks to
that's
everyone.
awesome.
Honestly, guys, a few of you are saying that it made them feel better. It makes us feel better.
Hey,
It really
really,
does.
this isn't a live chat, it's a group therapy session.
It is group therapy. I agree entirely. One more time, and with feeling, we have put a donation link in the post for this on our website, readtheline.ca. Go there, throw a few bucks at us, or sign up for even a free account. We'll figure out a way to monetize you later. If you want to just give us the cash right now, in the text of this YouTube stream is a link, a donor box. You can throw a few bucks our way. We are in the black in terms of paying for the chips, but we like money, so please give us more. I'm working on my sales pitch. That's what I've got for now. I know it's not perfect. I'm working on it.
We're journalists. We were not trained to the life of business. Okay.
No, or to be deputy prime ministers and finance ministers, apparently.
Apparently.
Seems to be a lot of that going around. Guys, have a wonderful night. Thanks again to Phil. Thanks to all of you. I'm going to end this live stream on the Zoom. In my experience, it's going to take about a minute for it to actually end on YouTube. I think the screen will just go to black, but we will do this again, guys. Everybody take care. Like and subscribe, and check us out at readtheline.ca.